Many familiar names amongst our participants. So thank you all very much for joining us this Thursday evening. So we're here today for a discussion called Reflections and Perspectives, Strengthening Iraqi Higher Education Research. And it's really a reflection and a celebration of all the work that Dr. Mehyar, Dr. Ersoon, Dr. Ariane, and many of you here today have delivered over the past, 6 or 7 years now, through what was originally British Academy funded project on Iraq writing workshops. Some of you may have been involved in those very first ones. And Dr. Regine, I see your name here. Hello. Thank you for your contribution to that all those years ago. And then taking the learning from those first 3 very successful workshops back in 2019, and then reconfiguring and enlarging those through some really interesting focus groups that Dr. Mehyar and Dr. Ersoon and Dr. Ariane led, to something much bigger than that, something much more sustainable, which we are now in the process of handing over to colleagues in Iraq to continue with under the auspices of the Ministry of Higher Education in Baghdad. So I'm not going to play much part in this. I'm going to listen, because I have really can claim no credit at all for this myself. It has all been the leadership of Dr. Mehyar and his colleagues that have made this happen. So I want, before I hand over, just to thank all of you who have supported Mehyar, who have contributed critically to helping make the programme such a big success. And so as part of the legacy, we want to be setting out in our very final report, some recommendations for future work for other people who come along after us to take over. So feel free to speak honestly about your experiences of the programme, so that that can feed into the report anonymously. You'll have seen Ersoon's draft already, I hope, of some of it. And then we will be coming together again in 2 weeks' time on the 3rd of July for a more general webinar, again, asking for input on evaluation and impact of the Nahrein network as a whole. But this was such an important component of it and involves so many people, we thought it was important to devote its own session. So here we are today. Okay, I think I've talked too much already, so I will be quiet now and hand over to Dr. Mehyar. Thank you all.
Thank you, Elena, for the introduction. I'm going to speak for a bit, and then I'm going to ask some of our panelists to speak about their own experiences with AcademIQ, which was established as a program after the 2019 British Academy funded workshops were implemented, as Elena has just reminded us. Those workshops were organized in Slemani in Iraqi Kurdistan, and with the support of Dr. Rojin Mohammed Amin, and 2 other workshops. One was in Kufa, University of Kufa in Najaf, and the third was in Mustansariya in Baghdad. We'd like to thank all our colleagues who attended and supported us in those workshops. And these were some of the first workshops organized in Iraq to strengthen 2 things. One was the quality of the standard of research, and the second was to improve publications, the quantity of publications in international journals. Dr. Ersoon Kurtuluş from Turkey he introduced and supported the program with a mentorship program, an academic mentorship program. And this consisted of two parts. One was online workshops, and the second in place or in country workshops, which were organized afterwards. But Dr. Arsun was also with us in the 2019 workshops, similarly to Dr. Ariane Smart, um, who is also one of the facilitators, trainers of the academic research course, which is the second program. So we have two programs that have been ongoing from 2019 onwards, and that's the mentorship scheme. So this is a program for small groups to work with Dr. Orson directly under his direction, to work on their own particular specific research projects. And the second was, and which is still ongoing actually, until the July 2025 is the when we complete the program, is the academic research course, which is a platform on UCL Extend, an online platform, which is a program or a course that is accessible to our Iraqi colleagues to contribute to after this program ends, but has been the course that has been delivered also currently with Dr. Ariane Smart and Dr. Ariane Smart and Dr. Fran Sutherland. I would like to introduce Dr. Arsun Kotrolosh to speak about his own experiences, his own insights, and I think some of you have his report, which, as Ellen has said, will be part of a discussion, part of a larger report, thinking about how we can work together going forward as academics interested in improving, strengthening higher education in Iraq. Dr. Arsun.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm Ersun Kurtuluş, and I'm an associate lecturer, associate professor actually, yeah, associate professor at the Social Sciences University of Ankara, in Ankara. And I'm also one of the associate editors of British Journal of Middle Eastern Studies. And I was enrolled in this program since 2019. And everything started with an email from Mehyar asking me whether I could be in Baghdad within the next 48 hours. And I had the challenge of acquiring a visa. And luckily, everything went well. And I participated in the first workshop in 2019, December 2019, just before the pandemic. And as in my capacity as one of the editors of British Journal of Middle Eastern Studies, and saying something about publishing and what type of criteria that editors usually look at. And that has become the first step in a wonderful experience on my part. I mean, then we had several workshops, 3 cohorts in total, which I'm going to speak about in some detail now. So after that very first experience in Iraq, which turned out to be just in the middle of demonstrations at that time, which naturally allowed me to develop some kind of attachment to the country, what happened was simply I got involved in the process. And as always, I mean, some kind of a problem description. I mean, we are going to do some workshops, and what type of problems are we going to address? And one thing that occurred to me at that time, and I may have shared with my colleagues, and I may have been influenced by my colleagues while building up that perception, was that the overwhelming majority of academic articles on Iraq or articles, issues related to Iraq, are authored by Western academics or Iraqi academics enrolled in Western universities, at Western universities, employed by Western universities. And this is naturally a bit bizarre. Where are the Iraqi voices? Naturally, this is science. Anyone can write about anything. But it is a bit striking that there should be so few academics employed at the Iraqi universities writing in good quality, prestigious journals, publishing in good quality, prestigious journals. So that was the starting point. And the spontaneous reaction on my part was this can be due to two things, which I also shared. I mean, these ideas more or less were formulated during my interaction with my colleagues, my enrolled in this workshop series. One reason might be the so-called Anglo-Saxon style of writing, which is the dominant style of writing in journals, SSCI or ESCI journals, or Scopus journals. And that is very common that academics operating in those parts of the world, which is not part of the Anglo-Saxon world, may not be well versed or well exercised in that style of writing. That's a specific style of writing. And the second possibility was perhaps lack of or weak methodological training, quality issues. So we had several focus groups in 2020 where we had conversations with our Iraqi colleagues about what the problems could be. And gradually what we could do started to materialize. The idea of what we can do started to materialize in our minds. So one thing did appear during these conversations, and that is, well, like everywhere in the world, there are problems in the academia. Some of the problems are universal, like SSCI journals not responding or making a decision before, say, 8-9 months, and this affecting our career developments. That's universal. But there were also problems that were specific to Iraq. And here, the second stage was to differentiate between problems that we can do something about and problems where perhaps there's a need for more institutional intervention. Research libraries, this is a big problem in Iraq. Maybe we can't do something about it. But isolation of Iraqi academics, maybe we can do something about it. So as you may see, I mean, step by step, we are having a blueprint, some kind of a roadmap about what we could do. And the outcome was academic with I and Q in capital letters. And it had 3 components: an online research course and an academic writing workshop. And finally, research and academic mentorship. In other words, disseminating good practice. And I was involved in the second and the third components of it. And colleagues like Ariane took care of the first component, the UCL Extend part of it. I mean, an online research course. We organized it in such a way that we would both have in place and online sessions, at least 7 sessions in total. And the in-place sessions would take place in different cities in Iraq, and online sessions will be complementing that face-to-face interaction. And the whole idea was to start with a research question, which is always the most difficult part of any kind of research project in my mind, because good research question, good research, that's the second step, which is usually like that. And if you have problems and if you are lost, probably you may need to revisit your research question, starting from there, all the way to a draft article, publishable in a good journal. And in the meantime, there were networking possibilities for colleagues, both with me. I mean, I have my background in Sweden and in the UK, academic background, and I'm currently working at a Turkish university, so I can regard myself as rather international, having operated in different cultural contexts. And also within Iraq, that was something that I noticed at a very early stage, that Iraqi colleagues, they didn't they didn't go to other universities within Iraq. Many colleagues hadn't been in Baghdad, for instance, I mean, from the KRG area, or many colleagues hadn't been in the south. So that also created networking possibilities, and parallel with in-place sessions, there were also visits to local universities. I remember spending a beautiful 1/2 day in Duhok University. Several colleagues visited their colleagues in Basra University, Iraqi colleagues. So the whole idea is, to a certain extent, breaking that isolation, both at the national level within Iraq and international level. And at the same time, providing some kind of methodological training and writing, training in academic writing. Now, the question here is, what do I have to contribute there? If you are enrolled in a workshop of this type, it's very easy to fall into the trap of patronizing. I mean, coming from a more privileged part of the world, and I decided to resist that temptation from the very, very beginning. And I defined my role as primus inter pares. I'm first among equals, and I'm among colleagues. Nothing more, nothing less. What do I have to offer? What do I have to bring to the table? One, I have been teaching methods, qualitative methods and research designs since 1990s, almost 3 decades. I have some experience there. And I also have almost 2 decades of experience as an associate editor of the British Journal of Middle Eastern Studies. So in a way, I'm both a contributor and I have submitted so many articles and got so many rejections, so many referee reports of varying quality. That could be a contribution to the workshop. And I'm also a decision maker, and I have general idea about what type of articles get through the first screening, the internal reviewing process, and end up with the referees and how we evaluate referee reports and so on. So that was the confines of my contribution to these workshops. And as I said, I only saw myself as one, I mean, primus inter pares, one among equals, I mean, the first among equals, and nothing more than that. So outcome, I mean, this was the planning. Outcome was 3 cohorts of academics between September 2022 and November 2024. The outcome was 23 draft articles out of 29. Here I exclude participants who have never showed up. I mean, they register, but they never. I never met them. They never appeared at any of the workshops in place or online. And if I exclude them, and if I take into account dropouts, out of 29 participants, we had 23 draft articles. It's a bit early to judge the outcome of the second and the third cohort at this stage, because it has, I mean, now it's about 7-8 months, which is a very short time span when it comes to publication. But when I take into account the first cohort, the outcome was 2 publications, 1 article under review, 1 conference submission, 1 neither of it. I mean, he neither submitted nor did any conferencing or published it. And I didn't get any response from 2. I mean, the N, the total population is 7. 7 successful completions. I mean, successfully submitted articles. Successfully completed the workshop series by formulating, by composing a draft article. I also conducted some evaluations and email exchanges with my colleagues, those who have completed and I sent the questionnaire to everyone. I received 14 responses, and I had email exchanges with 3. And I mean, almost all participants mentioned how the workshops improved their methodological and academic writing skills. The evaluations also provided some evidence about dissemination of good practice, method courses at undergraduate or postgraduate levels, some kind of supervision of colleagues, turning into some kind of a method of the czar in their departments, and people turn to them with their questions about research design and so on. And several colleagues also mentioned increased professional self-confidence as an outcome of these workshop series. Now, the outcome is generally positive, and the evaluations were also positive. I have to mention they were not anonymous, but I had no reason to think that one or another participant would provide negative evaluation. I had no reason to think along those lines. In general terms, it was positive. I'm not going to go through all those positive remarks that has been done. And I don't think that if there are any questions, I can delve into it during the conversations, during the discussions. But several things do appear as problem. One is obstacles in acquiring leave from universities to participate in the workshop. I'm talking about in-place workshops. So online workshops, they were during the evenings. And because of that, we had to organize the workshops in a way that it coincided with weekends as much as possible. And this is an issue which might be taken up with Ministry of Higher Education, that university admins should be a bit more lenient about providing leave to academics when they are participating in such activities, which is positive for the colleague, for the academic, but for the university as well. And in a sense, because of my experience in Turkey, I can understand it, because I'm operating in a similar geography, and in our geography, the Middle East, it's the work culture is very much presence orientated, not performance orientated. In the UK, you don't need to be in your office, but you really work hard. You really work hard. While in Turkey, and I imagine this might also be the case in Iraq because of the similarity in the cultural environment, you have to be there. You have to show your presence, even if you waste your time drinking tea. That there's a cultural element to that. But this may still be taken up with the Ministry of Higher Education, that universities should be a bit more lenient about these type of leaves. Another thing which popped up was there were different views among colleagues about the composition of the cohorts. Several colleagues preferred very much discipline-orientated cohorts, like archaeologists, or only linguists, or applied linguists, or international relations. Now, when I think about, first of all, the opinion is divided. Some colleagues, several colleagues, appreciated the interdisciplinary nature of the workshops. Both has advantages and disadvantages. If you have very specific, discipline-specific workshops, in my opinion, this would be very much like a panel of a conference. And people will come up and discuss papers very in detail, going in depth about the subject matter. But this workshops series is more about methodological training. And if you believe, as I do, in the unitary nature of methodologies, natural sciences, humanities, and social sciences, they have some kind of a methodological unity. I'm an old, hopeless positivist in that respect. Then the advantage of having interdisciplinary workshops is that you can really concentrate on research design. And suddenly you notice that other disciplines, they also struggle with similar problems of controlling variables and how you are going to exert control over the variables so that you can make causal statements and so on. So to summarize, both options has its negatives and its positives. In terms of, if these type of workshops were to be repeated in the future, I have a long list which I mentioned in in the evaluation, and those who are familiar with that may ask questions about it. But there are much that can be done. Follow-ups with draft articles. I mean, what happens to them? I mean, it's not the end of the story. Okay, we have a draft article, but the second challenge, the universal challenge, is to publish it somewhere. How, if one could have any kind of, I wouldn't say supervision, but if one could give advice about how to proceed after the first rejection and the first referee reports. And I always emphasize, if you are not rejected, you are selling your product cheaply. So it starts with a rejection. You have to be rejected. Otherwise, you are selling it very cheaply. How to deal with, I mean, theoretically, it is possible to say this. Well, okay, you have a rejection, leave it aside, revisit it after 2 weeks. But it can be helpful to have a person in flesh and blood where you can simply discuss and vent your frustration about these rejections and so on. Some kind of a mechanism might be helpful. More importantly, comparative advantages of Iraq. I'm using Ricardo's term here, comparative advantage. Just like Portugal producing port wine, Iraq, in terms of academia, has some advantages which nowhere else in the world, no other academic environment has. There are certain things we can study. Conservation is a big topic. Excellent area, excellent country to study conservation, heritage issues, archaeological sites, protection of archaeological sites. That's antiquity. Post-conflict reconstruction of the state, muhassasa system, corruption. I mean, some of these things can't be studied, of course, because of the political climate. But the list is very long. The trauma of living under a totalitarian state, for instance, trauma of sectarian violence. There is so much where Iraqi academics have a comparative advantage that no one else has, even in physical terms. If anyone wants to go to the Middle East these days, probably human resources will hit the roof. Where are you going? Well, Iraqi academics are in the field. And one way of doing it is naturally, as we did, having perhaps much more tailored workshops about archaeology, heritage, or whatever, with subject-specific competence existent there as well, but also encouragement of co-authored articles with academics operating in the Western universities. Okay, you are coming. You are studying an archaeological site, most probably with an Iraqi archaeologist. Well, where is the name of that Iraqi archaeologist when you publish the final article? These things I think we should raise with our, I'm not going to say Western colleagues, but colleagues from British University as well, that they should perhaps take a more proactive attitude in collaborating. And that would naturally help breaking the isolation that Iraqi academics have been experiencing for decades now. Yeah, I think I'm going to stop here. That was a fantastic experience for me. I mean, I met lovely people. And at a personal level, my rusty Arabic started to become fluent again, which I was very happy about it. I made so many friends, and I miss them living in Turkey. Sometimes I call them to ask how everything is. So it was an ultimately positive experience for me. Well, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Ursun. I would like to, I'm sure some of us have questions and contributions also based on some of the topics raised by Dr. Ursun. I'd like to invite Dr. Thamar Zubaidi from the University of Wasat, who I believe has been with the program since 2019 and also has been part of the Dr. Ursun's mentorship program, but also the academic research course. Dr. Thamar also may have some insights about some of the outcomes of our work and also ways in which higher education could be strengthened, or at least having a more informed debate about the challenges in higher education. Dr. Thamar.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mehia. Good afternoon, and thanks for inviting me to be part of this workshop. I am honored to be among you, and I'm really happy to see some of the persons that I feel really grateful to, like Dr. Ursun, Dr. Arian, of course, Dr. Mehia, and Professor Eliano, and also some of colleagues like Aus and Alia and the other. Of course, thanks to Zainab, because she is monitoring this, and through Dr. Arian to Dr. Fran as well. And well, I'm going to answer some of the issues that I am asked to. So starting with my position, because I'm going to comment later on the two workshops that I participated in. And I hope that I will stick to the time allowed to me. So I'm a senior lecturer at the Department of English, College of Education for Human Sciences, Wasat University. Now I am, of course, one of the academic staff at the department. I had some of the committees, but I am sure, one of the responsibilities is concerning research, especially at the College of Education, which is one of the colleges, or the scholars in this college is one of the sample or specimen chosen for the Academics 25 for this participants in the humanities and arts and social sciences. So, in answer to what is being asked or demanded by Iraqi researchers in terms of roving, of course, academic personnel, whether this is at the university, at the university or the ministry, are aware of the necessity of participating in international ranking. The reason for this is that ranking can boost a university's participation, university's international profile, attracting more students, researchers, and funding opportunities. And it is beyond dispute that publication plays a major role on this. Accordingly, several decisions were taken to encourage publication, for example, such as encouraging the number of published papers under the umbrella of Scopus and Web of Science, and even allocating financial rewards for this. And the second suggestion is that is to have research groups, so that researchers would collaborate in order to publish or papers, so that they enhance the standards of research, especially when they vary in the standards in research writing. And if some of the barriers faced by Iraqi scholars, which are faced, and some of them raised in the YouTubes that I have watched on UCL Extend in the second workshop, Academics 25, some of them refer to. So researchers in social science and education, and this applies to the College of Human Science, Arts, and Basic Education, as well as other colleges such as the College of Law, face unique challenges in the journey towards publication in high impact English language academic journals. These fields are deeply contextual, shaped by local cultures, histories, and systems, yet publishing in those journals, especially those indexed in the Scopus or Web of Science, is kind of challenge. And often the researchers often expect conformity to Western epistemologies and communication styles, as Dr. Ursun has raised in his. And this, in addition to this, research interest of some local journals which are indexed with the umbrella of Scopus are scientific. I mean, till now, no journal specialized in humanities is indexed under the umbrella of Scopus and the other. To answer your question, whether those are being asked because of career, I mean, why publishing because of career and university progression? Of course, those are being asked and suggested because of career and university promotion and also academic and intellectual development. And the more developed academic staff intellectually and academically, the easier their promotion would be, and also the shorter would be the time for universities to join international ranking. Does also encourage joint publication with Arab and international scholars to build confidence and visibility, facilitate mentorship and scholar exchange programs. If I refer to the needs, and some of these needs are raised by Dr. Asun maybe, and even in the second workshop, kind of mentorship on the other. The first is research methodologies. While many researchers are familiar with the qualitative and quantitative approach, they may lack training in advanced or mixed method design, theoretical framing, or critical discourse analysis, which are frequently expected in reputable journals. Iraqi scholars may struggle to have their locally grounded research taken seriously unless they learn how to bridge the gap while preserving the locality of their research depth of analysis. The second is mastering English language. For non-native English speakers, language remains one of the biggest obstacles Iraqi scholars face in publishing internationally. This is particularly identified in the social science and also educational and literary studies, where English proficiency remains the lowest in Iraqi universities and disciplines. And here I'm not talking about scholars in the Department of English, but other departments in the College of Arts and College of Education and Social Science. The third is strategies to overcome these. So how to overcome? I'm here making some suggestions to overcome these. For example, implementing workshops like these workshops implemented by UCL. But, Iraqi universities are now more than 25, and UCL cannot afford, to do the whole job alone. So these workshops have to focus on social science and education writing, where participants can learn discipline-appropriate structure, citation practices, argumentation techniques. This might take the form of short-term programs starting writing a proposal, preparing an outline, structure of an academic paper, providing a feedback on drafts, and offering an advice on journal selection, which entails assessing journal scope, examining author guidelines carefully, and avoiding mismatched predatory and predatory journals. This might also include the reference to the fact that some journals now offer waiver, of course, for scholars from developing countries. The second is mentorship networks, engaging or pairing Iraqi researchers with experienced scholars, national or international, who can provide feedback. Dr. Osson referred to this at the end of his paper, of his participation here, on a draft or report, and offer calculated advice on journal selection, peer review processes, and responding to reviewer feedback. During this stage, using real examples from participants' ongoing research process would be of great help for the participants. Learning support, language support and development, universities and research centers should provide. In fact, this is not found in Iraqi universities. Language editing services, ideally, with scholars, especially those with high rate of publication international, and also editors of local journals who understand disciplinary jargon and publication norms. The fourth is collaborative writing terms, and there's a necessity to encourage and promote group writing efforts where scholars with good command of English could help scholars with low efficiency of English. And I think this is also referred to in one of the videos in which about one of the editors in the I think Heritage, one of the Australian magazines as well. And also publication motivation. Now, there is publication motivation, but till now it is restricted to quartile 1 I'm talking about the Ministry of Higher Education and the Iraqi universities, which mean the quarter 2, 3 are not included in this, which, something becomes not only competitive, but also sometimes somehow difficult, if not impossible, for scholars in those colleges. I mean, the College of Education, College of Arts, and the other. So, is there a difference or not? Well, I can't say yes, there is a difference, although we are still at the threshold, because this has been initiated by the Ministry of Higher Education in January 2025. So both on the level of the ministry and university, there is a decision to encourage publication in prestigious journals. And I think there would be some actions to be taken against those who refrain from taking this into consideration. I mean, academic staff was not taking. And I can consider the academic workshop, especially those implemented by UCL Nahrein network, as notable examples of collaboration with the Ministry of Higher Education. So it is the role of Ministry of Higher Education to find other networks, other universities in order to collaborate with. Speaking about my experience regarding participating into workshops. So I'm fortunate to be one of the participants in 2 training workshops. The first academic, which included more than 7 sessions, lasted from 13 September 22 until November 23. And the second academic 25, which was held weekly from 14 February till 11 April 25. The first workshop coincided, luckily, with the beginning of a research paper that was published. I was working on this with the beginning of the workshop in May 25, almost 5 months following the culmination of the workshop. Accordingly, I benefited from the online sessions, beginning with how a viable research question can be derived, constituting an extensive and critical literature review, research design, data collection, and also in the second session, which was an in-person or in-place, as Dr. Orson called them, in-place session held in Baghdad. And for 2 days, I had enough time to explain the research questions of that paper and also to get a thorough feedback from a prestigious editor like Dr. Orson Koteles. The same can be said about the second in-person session held in April from 9 to 10 April 23. Those 2 sessions, through the feedback presented in them, were influential not only in formulating a new research question, but even the literature review and the orientation of the argument in that paper. And as for the second workshop, dedicated for Iraqi scholars or researchers in the field of arts, social science, and the humanities to strengthen their knowledge of academic skills, writing, publishing, and research collaboration, both conveners, Dr. Fran Sutherland and Dr. Ariane Start, exerted valuable efforts in discussing major components of an abstract, starting from making references to the research problem, literature review, then narrowing the gap through the research questions, type of research questions, and later on methodology and results of the paper. The above was consolidated in the following weeks by focusing on theoretical framework, argument, and ethics and positionality. Such theoretical framework was augmented by a practical step, which is through the portfolio, which is skillful distribution of the main components of a research paper. There are even means of communication between Fridays through the Padlet, in which participants can send or ask questions. Along with this, of course, we were provided with significant resources, 3 books and articles, and also YouTubes, and also reference to the how to employ social media, whether Facebook and LinkedIn in teaching. And what topics are future capacity I should focus on. I am absolutely aware that the large number of participants in the second workshop of course, I'm going to refer to the first workshop later, was a challenge because we were about 10 in the first workshop with Dr. Arsoon, but the number, I think, more than 50 in the second. So it was kind of challenge. And assume that the list of participants in the was longer. So I am also aware of the great efforts to encourage participants to engage and take part in the discussion. I am aware of this. Moreover, some of the participants were maybe less active than before. So concerning the first workshop, my feedback was, and I think Dr. Arson know about this, I know about the question of financing these workshops. If I am asked about my suggestion, I would love to uh, ask for increase the number of the in-person workshops, because compared to the 2 hours in the online workshop, or let us say 3 workshop, for the in-person, it is about 2 days. 2 days are dedicated for each workshop. I mean, for each session, in which you can be with Dr. Arson or any other person for more than 6, let us say, 6 hours. And then you have after, because we have some places to visit in Iraq. So the discussion can continue even after leaving the halls and go to see the other. And for the second workshop, I hope that providing feedback for the portfolio would be conducted earlier. I know it is difficult to provide feedback for 50 participants before the end of the workshop, so that the convener would know how the feedback would be implemented. Because in the first workshop by Dr. Asun, we are being asked what is being done later. What did you do? How did you develop this? And this goes on this went from workshop to another work, from session to session. With the second workshop, I know that was difficult because the portfolio, or examining the portfolio, came later. Especially some of the participants were not participating this right from the beginning. So, and I hope that for future, in order to engage participants, I suggest that participant asks to finish a task, so that such as writing viable research questions and post them after a session, and they would be asked about this. I know that 2 hours each Friday is perceived enough for participant, and need to feel that there is a weekly task. I believe that if they believe that there is a task and their names for example, I don't want to push that to this extent, is that to have names, for example, those names are going to comment on the portfolio next week, for example, what they have done. But some depending on the locality or the place where I come from, I believe that this might push others or the participant to participate in this. And finally, I would like to express my great attitude for the UCL Nahrein network, represented by Professor Eliana Robinson, Dr. Mehia Khanum, Zainab Mehdi, and also the great work and efforts of Dr. Ersoon, Dr. Fran, and Ariane, and great thanks for providing me with this opportunity to speak on behalf of my colleagues. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Thamar. I see your hand is raised, Dr. Ursun. Would you like to say anything?
Yeah, yes, please. Yeah, about what Dr. Thabir. Thank you, Dr. Thabir. Nice to see you after such a long time.
Thanks so
About
much.
in-place workshops, there was overwhelming demand on the part of participants to have in-place workshops, more in-place, in-person workshops. Now, Dr. Thamir, I wish that I lived in Baghdad and I could have all the sessions face to face
Thank
and
you.
have my magrouche and smoke my nargile watching the sunset over Tigris in between. But the problem here is the costs, naturally. And I think this hybrid system was much more cost effective. I mean, if it was only online, probably we wouldn't have the dynamic. And this is also something that I mentioned in my report, my evaluation report. But if we had all of them in place, this would be incredibly expensive. Although I can see the point, but here the issue is what is practicable. I mean, what we can do given the finite amount of resources that we have, or any similar workshop series would have. But you have huge support among the participants, in your view, about in-place workshops.
Thank you, Dr. Orsoon. Dr. Ariane Smart, we've heard from Dr. Orsoon, and who was also one of your colleagues in the 2019 workshops, and Dr. Thamer. Would you like to contribute any of your thoughts based on your own experience working for academic and working with Iraqi colleagues?
Sure, of course. Hi, everyone. It's very nice to see some familiar names in the list of participants. So my name is Ariane Smart. I'm a historian by training, but I've specialized in international higher education for the past 15 years. So I've experience of working and living in other countries than my original country, that's France. I moved to Britain, and then I've spent roughly 5 years between Astana in Kazakhstan and Doha in Qatar, where I was in charge of setting up a heritage-related pre-masters. And so currently I'm an associate professor in academic and research communication, still at UCL. I've also been quite involved, and that's one perhaps similarities that I share with Dr. Fran, who I think will join us soon, is that we're both very aware of our position in Western institutions, very engaged with decolonial approaches. And I think my experience very on practical levels in Kazakhstan and Qatar made me perhaps more acutely aware of some profound epistemic injustices. And I was grappling with these issues in London when I got an email from a colleague and friend who was working with Mehyar on setting up these workshops. That was in 2019. So my first involvement with the Nahrein network was just like Ersoon in November 2019, when my friend and colleague Sarah Felix was preparing that series of academic writing and publishing workshops in Iraq, funded by the British Academy. Now, Sarah couldn't do the Baghdad one, so I said yes, I would love to. And that's how I found myself in Baghdad with wonderful colleagues at Mustansariya University. And so I've been involved more or less ever since. There was a bit of a silent moment during COVID for everyone. But in the wake of that epidemic, we started to brainstorm. We had different focus groups, brainstorming sessions with various colleagues in Iraq, within UCL, to see how we could develop these workshops further. So Ersoon has already described how, and I'm very jealous, he could be in a position to actually be there, but also work with smaller cohorts and have that direct involvement, which is the best possible way we can intervene, but is also an issue in terms of when you want to create something sustainable and also working at a larger scale and having a greater impact. So that's where we started to think, thinking about online support, different scenarios, what were the needs exactly. And as soon as already said, I think that's a really important one that both Sarah at the time and Fran now really share, is that the principle was very much to create a collaboration with colleagues, often much more, prestigious in their career and their expertise than I was as a researcher, certainly. So that was also something that we wanted to foster. I think there was a really a coherent approach and sets of principles in how we wanted to do this. I was starting to be quite aware of the amount of Western intervention, even for the, with the best intentions in the world, trying to fix things on the ground. And this is something we really didn't want to replicate. So we had these different sessions, brainstorming, focus groups, and the team changed. So we lost Sarah, we got other colleagues. Fran joined us, I think was last year or in 2023 perhaps. So we had a couple of courses that were asynchronous, which was very difficult for me. It's very difficult to create something without knowing how it is received, without, and I think Dr. Thamir has touched on that a minute ago. It's having this sense of what is the response? How do we know? And that was a bit of a void at the time. But it helped us to create a set of material and to start thinking about online pedagogy, which led Fran and myself to create the one that is currently running and finishing in the next 2 weeks, which includes 2 hours per week of live sessions. We have like a lecture-ish and a seminar, so which basically are both as interactive as we can have them. And I think that's the one of the issues that we've had, and come in a minute to the types of issues that we're facing, and perhaps consolidating or following up on what's been said already. Language has been an issue. It has been an issue in different ways. It's been an issue because we often have different levels of English. We have highly articulate native speakers, like fully bilingual at the top, and we have others who we never hear from, and we suspect they have troubles of understanding us well enough to participate. So online live sessions offer a good way to address some of these issues, because there are 2 of us. So one of us is monitoring the chat and using the chat to summarize key points that are being discussed, so that if the accent is a bit hard, the language in a written form might be a way, or if things are going too fast, sort of summary key points in the chat might help to some extent. It might also help those who are less confident in their oral skills to intervene, and they often do that. So we have like more than just those who intervene live orally in the sessions. We have also questions and comments, very rich, very active in the chat. So it was interesting for me to play with this as well, and to open up perhaps the courses to more than just the native speaker or near native speakers. The other point I wanted to make in terms of the language, it's sometimes considered as, and it depends on the level of the participants, it's not just a language in the traditional sense. It's not necessarily just a question of grammar. That is needed at the lower level of English, of course. But I think what we wanted to be doing is really to move away from sort of EAP technical approach, and to really combine English for publication with academic practice, and not just to separate language and academic communication. That was one of our key principles across the different elements and workshops that were delivered over the years. So it was really important in a way to focus not just on the language, but the academic language, but also academic writing conventions and publishing conventions. That will depend on the journals, that will depend on the context, that will depend on the subjects as well. So really having that conversation in terms of how we analyze these types of writing, these texts, and how this analysis can in turn help us to develop our own voice, our own style that is in line with the conventions in our disciplines. The other, there was a point raised before, was that this is very, very difficult to do when we have very different levels, both in terms of language and indeed of level of research experience. We have some who are starting their PhDs, and we have established professors. And so their understanding of methodology, their understanding of research design, their experience with research design is going to vary greatly, which is also tricky for us to address, a wide range of needs without boring the professors and not losing the PhD students and early career researchers. As it's been raised also, this is relatively interdisciplinary, and in our case, that's going to force us to be relatively generic, which is, for me personally, often a little bit frustrating, because generic can lead to something sometimes too simplistic. Doesn't have to be, but it's always a danger in how the conversations are led. So that's one thing, the language and how we understand the language and what are the best strategies. In my case, it's really to combine language and communication and not to consider language as purely a technical, grammatical thing. The second theme that was really, really strong from the get-go, from my time in Baghdad to these online sessions and the focus groups as well, critical thinking comes up again and again and again. This is something that is there's a huge appetite, I would say, enthusiasm to really push for a more critical education, both at school and in universities. That also creates all sorts of challenges, because critical thinking in my career and in my experiences is rarely defined. It's something that you have to do. It puts a lot of pressure on students. It's very hard to explain exactly what it consists of, how contextualized it is. It's going to be to look differently, whether you're thinking, in terms of international relations, architecture, history. The way critical thinking, or criticality, as I like to call it, is going to vary, and it is also practical. It is something that has to be done. It has to be practiced. It has to be just like writing. This is not something that you can teach and then poof, that's it. You've done your lesson. The student is officially stamped as a critical thinker. So it is a lifelong skill. It requires, a long time strategy to really implement it in line with the field that are pertinent to our colleagues. So it needs to be, something to be really considered in terms of pedagogic strategies and educational strategies. But I think there's a very strong point that has been made time and time again that by Iraqi colleagues, that one of the key issues at the moment is that this tendency to play safe and to replicate what has been said already, rather than develop your own contribution and your own voice. And that is, and Ersun has said that before, it's particularly the case in terms of methodology and how you defend your methodology. I think, Ersun, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in your report you were saying that a lot of research in Iraq is based on surveys with an absence of questioning, such as why such surveys need to be carried out. No, you didn't say that.
I think this was raised by one of the participants.
That's possible.
Yeah, okay.
Definitely. Thanks, Ersun. So, and that brings actually something that has to do with referencing, which of course is rarely neutral. And recent conversations in recent weeks in the final workshop have brought up really accurately the issue of not citing Iraqi voices because there's a bit of a pressure on some, as the way it was expressed, that when you try to bring up Iraqi voices because they are pertinent, they are relevant to the context, you might be discouraged to do so by your institution, by your supervisor, by colleagues. So there is here a sense of, a strong sense of the hierarchy and power structure, still deciding or putting some pressure on Iraqi colleagues as to how they can reference and how basically they can develop their contributions accordingly. There was, that is in the case of, in the context of the multiple pressures that, as Ersun was saying, some of them are specific to Iraq and some are relatively universal. The publish and perish, of course, has been brought up recently by some saying, well, a lot of colleagues are going to publish because they have to, because it's good, if they want promotion, they need to publish rather than out of a need or an intellectual ambition to better knowledge. That has come up quite a lot in the recent weeks and years. Some of these pressures, sometimes felt eerily close to home. The dismissing of humanities and social sciences are as unworthy subjects, the bureaucratization of research, the need to constantly document what we do and even what we aim to achieve before we have achieved it. So the pressure to publish or perish, which is a horrible term if you think about it. The time pressure, the institutional pressure, as we've discussed already today, that limits research space and imagination. So, the lack of resources, the lack of time to do things that Ersun could be doing on site. And yet, I want to end on perhaps a small positive note, because like Ersun, without necessarily being in the country, but 2019 has profoundly marked me. It's been an exceptional year for me being there. I will never thank Mayar enough for his support when I was there, and the whole university welcome. Up to last week and the recent weeks with our Iraqi colleagues during these workshops, I've been particularly inspired and moved by the energy, the talent, the dedication, and the trust that our Iraqi colleagues have displayed in our seminars. So many have talked about how they push for change at different levels, wherever they are, in different contexts, in their different positions, the pedagogy that they're passionate about, and thinking about the next generation of scholars. And I think there's really something that is shifting, that has been shifting. We are looking at, the challenges, and it's immense, and I recognize that, but I think the energy and the quality of the conversation that I don't often have in the UK environment, where a lot of things are about committees and strategies and planning. There was this boost of passion and hope for what is being built. And at a time where we're dealing with AI as well, and the bureaucratization of institutions, this passion for research and for education has really been an inspiration. And I think there's a great deal of energy that I hope is going to be, leading to further change. I don't want to sound idealistic there, but it's something that stayed with me. And on that note, I really want to thank Professor Eleanor and Dr. Mayar for this stunning project, which just has, given me so much and helped me to hopefully be a little part in that thing that is taking roots and I hope will grow for many years to come. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ariane, for that. It's been a pleasure working with you too. I would like to invite Dr. Alia from the University of Baghdad, who I remember was one of the first beneficiaries, and I remember Dr. Alia wasn't initially registered for the 2019 workshop, but demanded that she enter the at the University of Mustansariya.
Oh my God, you still remember?
I remember that very well. Dr. Alia has also since then been working with the academic program and contributing to some of the discussions. Dr. Alia.
Hello, everyone. I was one of the luckiest people among Iraqi researchers, I think. My first encounter was with that workshop in 2019, when I was informed very late about the workshop. I think it was at the last hour when the head of the department told me that there is a workshop held in Mustansariya University about publication and research internationally. If you like, you can go now because it's there in the hall in Mustansariya University. And I can't tell you how much I was running. I literally ran from the department to my car to the place when you were already started. And I then knocked on the door and I stayed waiting on the door until you said that there is a place you can join in. And that was my first encounter with you, Dr. Mehyar, and I was honored to have met you then. And since then, I was again lucky to be part of the workshop that was held by Dr. Arsoon, with the help, of course, organizers Dr. Mehyar and the team. And I participated in all the sessions, and yet the title I presented to publication was not the title that I published later on, because I had already started on a paper that I didn't mention in the workshop, but I kept on developing both titles. The title that I presented to the workshop, which is still in progress, but I managed since that workshop to finally publish my other title in Cambridge University Press Journal, which I'm very happy about. And later on, I participated in the workshop that was, I think me and Dr. Thamer joined the two sessions that he talked about, the one between late 2022 and 2023, and the one that was held in between February and April with, of course, Professor Fran and Ariane, Dr. Ariane, of course. Yet I was unlucky by the end of that session due to some personal tragedies that I have. Anyway, then I managed to join in the last ongoing now workshop with Professor Fran and Professor Ariane. I also, with Dr. Thamer, had the privilege of meeting with Professor Eleanor in person and Mehyar on a private meeting talking about trauma and the impact of trauma in Iraq.
Hello, Dr. Alia. Yeah, maybe you have connection problems.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we missed.
Yeah, I do have some.
20 seconds.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm so sorry. That's why I'm not opening my camera, because of the net connection that is unstable here. I'm trying to, put all the efforts into audio. Anyway, those workshops, I think I had to introduce myself first so that I can clarify why these workshops were very important to me. Right now, I'm a lecturer of English literature, drama, and English language in the University of Baghdad College of Arts. I also work as the general secretary of the college board, which gave me the privilege of approving and the research projects that are presented by all the professors in our college, because as a general secretary of the board, we have the privilege of accepting and approving and the research titles and research plans that are presented by college professors in our college to the university. Then those titles get the final approval from the university, and therefore I am encountering. I have that idea of how many research plans are presented by arts and humanities in particular in my college, for example, and I can see what kind of ratio of these articles or these planned articles are going to be finalized and published in the end. Throughout those workshops that I was lucky to be part of, the main, ideas that or the main benefits that our colleagues and us as researchers are in need of is the cultural exchange, the conversation, the openness, and the creativity atmosphere that those workshops provide us. I would give you examples. For example, with Dr. Ursoon, he was so dedicated and he was so into those projects to the extent that made us feel the importance of what we are doing. And our colleges, and I think Dr. Thamer mentioned that in many times, that arts and humanities are somehow in inverted commas second-rate research, not the first-rate research, because the universities and the ministry would always focus on the scientific research rather than arts and humanities. But with Dr. Ursoon and with his encouragement and with his push and with his dedication, we managed to understand that it's worth going for. It's very important, and we should push ourselves to do that. The meetings and the interest that he put in each and every individual project was quite real. And then up until the end, his personal calling each one of us and contacting each one of us, asking about us. I think he sent us the email, I think about a couple of months ago, asking us for feedback. I felt so embarrassed and humbled that if I wrote whatever I feel about his sessions, then he would feel that it's exaggeration. So I kept silent. I didn't want to say it. I wanted him to hear me say that he was a great teacher, and he is a great teacher to us. And I was very happy and very privileged to be in contact with him, and I think Dr. Thamer would share that with me. He is a real scholar, a scholar that you can trust and you can consult and ask for advice. And then I was again lucky to meet Fran and Ariane. The way they presented, the amount of honesty and earnestness that they show in the way they deal with each and every individual. A couple of my colleagues did not speak English very well, and they were from my college, and they were with us on the workshop. And after each session, we would come and meet in my office and talk about what we have talked about. And I used to explain to them in Arabic what happened and how we talked about that. And that was quite lively discussion that we never had normally in our environment, in our academic environment. These things were raised because of these workshops. The idea of exchanging ideas from different disciplines. I don't know anything about geography, but my colleague was telling me about his project in geography because simply we discussed some idea in the workshop or in the session the night before, and we spent half an hour on an hour discussing how he is going to develop his idea and how I'm going to talk about things that he wants me to clarify during the next session, and so on and so forth. These Zoom sessions were quite interesting and important, yet they lack some of the some of the, I think you need to know more about the requirements that we are living in. The kind of responsibilities that are put upon us as scholars and as admin members sometimes in our universities, to understand more of what I think, because I do trust that you can do more. For example, among the requirements that Dr. Tamer has touched upon is the promotion and the ranking of the university, and requirements for the promotions for us as teachers. Each professor is required to publish a certain number of articles, and now there is a kind of a pressure that these publications must be in a higher ranking journals, under the umbrella of Scopus and Web of Science, and most of the of those journals that are considerable and esteemed journals may take years to publish. For example, my article took 2 years to be published, simply because of the requirements and reviewing, and they would take at least 3 months in reviewing an article, and then would come up with ideas that they need us to talk about this and that. It's quite enriching and quite I enjoy this process, but again, it took 2 years for one article to be published. Therefore, most of our scholars and our colleagues who would want to or who insist to publish internationally, they would go for journals that you need to pay money for your articles to be published. And of course, those journals would take less time, but again, it requires money, and not all of us can pay that amount of money. It would reach $800 or maybe more if you are really in a hurry for your article to be published. Yet you would get a Scopus article published. The majority of our colleagues would go for national journals. For example, if I want to be promoted to be an assistant professor, then I would be required to publish at least 4 to 5 national articles, and then apply for the promotion. If it's international, then 3 articles would be enough. But again, I would take ages, and that's why my promotion has took me 7 years until now, because I want to be published internationally. I have the audience. I think I do have the audience because I'm talking about Iraq, and that's why I'm taking a long time, and I don't care about, oh, your promotion is very late. Your colleagues has gone to now thinking of getting the title of professor, and you are still thinking of the assistant professor title. I don't care about that, but it's again on the expenses of my promotion, on the expenses of my even payment, because promotion means more payment, and so on and so forth. Concerning the challenges that our colleagues may face when publishing their articles, of course, first of all, you need to avoid any critical topics. I talk about, for example, my specialty is in drama, and I wrote my PhD, again, luckily in the UK, about Iraq. So when I want to publish articles about Iraq, I need to be very careful, very cautious, because what kind of topics I can talk about in my articles that I will not be questioned for, that I will not touch on political ideas or religious ideas that might be dangerous for me as a person and for my research in the future. Because again, when you publish something that might go against the policy in the region or in the country, or even in faith, you might be questioned later on. That's one. As the second challenge is whether I would find credible resources and data to publish. That's another issue. Criticality of the subject matter may hinder or even slow the process of finishing an article. Lots of other ideas that that may stumble, that may make the publishing of my article stumble, is the among them is the idea of meeting the requirements of those journals. The requirements, I mean, in documentation system. Again, for me, for example, language is not a barrier, but the majority of my colleagues, language is a big barrier. For example, any of my colleagues from other departments who doesn't have a good, knowledge of English need to write their article in Arabic and then pay someone to translate that into English. And even when you pay an agency or a person to translate your article, they might fall into a false translation or a weak translation that you need to take it to a further person to proofread and develop that article. And in that process, lots of information would be lost in translation. And again, the article would not meet the original article. That's why I feel that the workshops has facilitated a lot, because it provided some guidelines. The in-person meetings with Dr. Arsoon was quite helpful, because Dr. Arsoon took all the time to read in each and everything that we wrote and comment on it personally. I second what Dr. Tamer said, the meetings did not finish in the sessions. We talk on dinner, after dinner, in walks. We took all the 2-3 days we spent together to talk about our research. Sometimes even if familiar talking may lead to ideas and development of those articles. Again, I can't say enough how much those workshops are important, and I can't say how much they are a creative environment, encouraging environment. As a person, I was isolated before them. In Iraq, since I returned to Iraq, I was buried with work and pressures, personal and academic. But these these few hours that we spend every week with those sessions, put me back in the shoes of the researcher I was in the UK. I still write ideas while I'm on these sessions. Develop things that I am working on. It literally de-isolates me from what I am living now in Iraq. Despite all the difficulties I face. And it's a joke when I talk about it now, but when it happened, it was a shock for me. In one of the sessions, lightning hit my house and everything went black directly. And I was, I wasn't, in pain that everything, all the electric equipment in my house went off. I was sad because I missed the rest of the session. I couldn't finish the session. This is how much those sessions are important to me as a scholar and as an Iraqi researcher. Thank you so much, everyone. By name, Professor Eleanor, Professor Ariane, Fran, Mahyar, Dr. Arsoon, so much thank you. And of course, all the organizers, thank you so much. And I'm still in the workshops. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Alia, for those words, those very kind words. I would like to ask Dr. Aus Abdul Wahab to give his thoughts about the program. Go ahead, Dr. Aus.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for your kind invitation here. I'm so honored, glad to see you personally and to see again Franz, Ersun, Dr. Eleanor, Ariane, and everybody. I might seem kind of repetitive because most of the points that you have addressed are things that I tackled in my reflections, and I called it personal reflections. You can consider it critical, honest, or even pessimistic reflections on the challenges that stand in the way of developing academic research in Iraq. some of the points have already been mentioned by Dr. Erson, by Dr. Thamer, and even Arian. And I think it's no harm if I may repeat some of the points, because if it refers to any things, it just indicates the authenticity of these points that we talked about together. So we can say that there is a pattern for the research problems that we encounter in Iraq. And for the purpose of brevity and time considerations, I'm going to list points that I have come up with in this short time. So I would say first that the overall environment in Iraq, university professors, like most of the Iraqis, are burdened with daily life issues like electricity, crowded street, transition, slow and gradual transition towards economic, political, and social stability. You know, the previous conditions, the wars, the economic sanctions, and all of these conditions do impact us as people and as professors in Iraq. Second important point is the infrastructure. And by infrastructure, I mean for example, the internet service. We do have bad internet service, and Dr. Thamer and other professors from Iraq may agree with that point. The inefficient libraries, including the access to international books and journals and publications. These journals and these publications require financial resources for subscriptions and these things. So, for example, if I talk about the Mosul University Library, I can tell you that most of the resources, books, journals that we have are outdated. We also have, in terms of the qualitative research, no access to probably some important softwares, because this requires payment. And me, as a graduate who did the studies in the USA, have access to these softwares. So, for example, the social studies software like the QDA, Qualitative Data Analysis. And I remember that I have a subscription with the Atlas TAI. These are important software that help the researchers to do their research. The other point that I want to mention is that most of the Iraqi academics, and this point has probably been mentioned by Alia, is that most of them are overwhelmed with administrative work. So right now we are filling out endless information all the time. We are involved in non-academic works and committees, social and community work. This is part of the things that we have to do as part of the faculty assessment at the end of the year. So you have to be part of these issues, and probably Dr. Thamer, Alia, and all the Iraqi professors know about the importance of being part of these committees. The other point is the lack of opportunities to work with researchers from abroad to develop and become acquainted with the new research methods, including research topics from international perspective. And I think Dr. Erson mentioned that point when he talked about the isolation. So Iraqi professors might not be familiar with their own colleagues from other universities. So there is some sort of isolation, and let alone the teamwork and networking. So it's quite weak within the Iraqi universities and research system in general. The other point is motivation because of the bureaucracy and rigid system. Iraqi PhD and MA holders from international universities are widely frustrated. Nearly 70% of them, and I can talk about because I'm involved in other groups for those lucky ones who have the opportunities to do their studies in the UK, USA, Australia, and other countries, most of these researchers, according to some surveys, are inactive, unfortunately, because probably the kind of contradictions with what they have experienced in terms of the quality of the research and the topics they covered, and the reality in Iraq, in Iraqi institutions. Another point that I want to mention, and I think this one is quite important from my own perspective, is the absence of research policy in terms of in humanities and even scientific fields. In the higher ed system, education system, and the academic departments, they don't have a clear and pre-planned research agenda that redress problems encountered in reality. And this is something, in my opinion, is quite important. Because you may, for example, work based on your passion, but we do not have a clear idea about the topics that we should address. And I might not be talking about myself in person, but others. And I think one of the colleagues mentioned that about the repetitive topics that we usually tackle in our academic circles. I'm sorry, I might seem kind of pessimistic, but this is the reality. The other point is the closed mentalities within some circles of academic departments. Some individuals, usually with administrative power, stand against any potential initiative to make change. And I might mention a couple experience. So I work in the Department of Translations. I have my PhD in studies in higher education. I studied at the Department of Policy Studies and Evaluation in the USA at the University of Kentucky. And at one point in time, I tried to come up with a topic relevant to translation, but it doesn't deal with the linguistic issues. So the head of the department told me that this is inconsistent with the type of topics that we tackle, and I have had to go back and gather references and proofs that, and make a committee meeting to prove that this topic is relevant, and just to present it in a workshop. It's not even a paper, but a workshop about the translation studies. I once, for example, presented a proposal to move from the paper work. So, for example, the senior students at the fourth year in translation department, they usually present their projects. The senior students, they present projects in a paper manner. I suggested that we move to electronic, and the students can present an electronic copies of their work, and I explained the value of this work in terms of the environment, the economy, the so many reasonable, and this proposal was refused, and they just preferred to work on the old way. Another point that was mentioned here, probably by Dr. Alia and others, is the lack of problem-motivated research topics. So if you make a survey or study the type of the MA and even PhD students topic, you see that most of these topics are pre-selected by their supervisors. So the student passion has no place in these in this work or in this equation. Professors also do their research most of the time only for academic promotion, and that's why you barely see reality relevant topics. Instead, you find shallow, insignificant, and repetitive topic. I can say that these are interconnected and complex factors. However, still, we are moving slowly towards change. So this is probably the light at the end of the tunnel, as we can say. I can see myself some change and some individual initiatives to create change and to move towards modernity and catch up the world in terms of the academic research. Recently, the Ministry of Higher Education have made or issued an order to make those graduates who got their PhD and MA from abroad, mainly US, Australia, UK, to have more active role in the administrative work. And for those who are familiar with the Iraqi context and environment, everything has to take some administrative power. So the ministry have taken the initiative and is trying to make those people more involved in the administration and orientation of the academic research and even the administrative manner to kind of make shift in reality. These are the points that I wanted to share. And as I said, I haven't been involved in the previous courses, but I have spoken based on my experience, and I was one of the lucky people to take part in the academic research skills course that was held a couple months ago, and I really enjoyed the discussions, the debate, and the element of critical thinking that was emphasized by all the participants. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Aus Abdul Wahab from the University of Mosul. We have one more speaker, then we can then move on to Dr. Fran Sutherland, but I would like to introduce first Jihad Fatah, if you'd like to say a few words.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Is my sound clear? So, yeah.
Very clear.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Jihad Fatah. I have a master's degree in sociology. I am working as a full-time social worker at the court in Suleimani. But I am also have sometimes I have a part-time work as a assistant lecturer at the private university. So my full-time is in it is not in higher education sector. It is in the other government sector. I'm working at the course as a social worker. So I want to just make a short speech about. I have divided my speech to two parts. One parts that the reasons or the encourage me to participate in such a course or such a research academic research program. I have participated in the latest program. I think it was the latest one. It has started in April 2024 and has finished in April 2025. So I was lucky that I have participated in such a great workshop, especially with the effort of Dr. Erson. He was, as others mentioned, that he encouraged us how to participate, how to make a research, and how to join other disciplines with our specialties. First of all, if I talk about the reason why I participate in such a program, even if I am not in higher education, it's about when you participate in a program that is include, for example, it came from a university like UCL. It makes you to have an international connection with the others. Doing research is need to have a more knowledge about what's going on outside your environment. So participating with an international training, it's give you that opportunity to have this kind of having knowledge about the other issue that is happening around the world. Especially when we participated with the Dr. Erson. Dr. Erson has a background of he's a Turkey, Sweden. So this kind of mixed knowledge is give you something that is more than that you get. So it is about deepening in my subject expertise. The one reason that I wanted to participate and developed my research skill, because in the government sector, out of the higher education, getting training of doing research is very let's say it's limited. You don't have that opportunity to participate in the training, so you have to find by yourself as a person. You have to find by yourself that opportunities to participate in the research. What else? What the other thing that I can say about the reason why I participated in such courses? It's about maybe it is good for my CV if I have something like participating in such great university with this great organization, Nahrein network. So this is make my CV be more reachable. And the other reason that I participated is about self-motivation and making project management skills, and make a deeper sense of curiosity, and have a critical inquiry about how to improve my field as a sociologist. So this make me to have a more confidence in my work. So it's make me to be more confident in my subject as a sociologist. That was the first part. The other part that I want to mention in my speech is about the problem, the challenges that someone has in a government institution to do research. You mentioned about challenges doing research in higher educations and barriers that researchers have in higher education. So if there's lots of challenges, there's lots of barriers in higher educations, so I can say there are doubled problem, double challenges, doubled barriers at the other government sectors, that when you want to do research, especially when you are just employee at that institution. So when you don't have that, for example, when you want to make a research, they say, okay, what about your own responsibility that you have at the, for example, court? So I want to focus on the court, for example. In the court, when you want to do research, the first thing that you face as a researcher, it's about your title. In higher education, it's okay, you have a title, academic title. But in the other sector, like a court, for example, my title is a social worker. So they think that you don't need to have, it is not your specialties. Maybe they think that to do research about something, so you have to do it in personal. Okay. So when you do in personal such researches, so there's lots of barriers also for that. I don't want to mention. The other thing that I want to mention in out of the higher education, that's the government sectors, that it's out in higher education is about, for example, in court, there are something about security. They don't they say these issues of for example when you are doing research, these issues, for example, when I want to make a research about divorce, for example, even if I am at that court and I am employee, they don't let you to have access to those how can I say, to those cases that it's already at that court, because they say it's included some confidentiality and it is somehow it's personal issues. So that problem of the security and the problem of not sharing data, it's the problem. The other problem that it's in, I am talking about the Kurdistan region government. It's about limited digitalization of the data. So when you want to collect data, you have to do lots of effort in order to collect data. And sometimes you can't rely on those data because it's inaccurate and it's incomplete and recorded. The other things that I want to mention is about the lack of research ethic in structures. There is no any board that look at your research at the government sectors out of the higher education. And let me give an example. There is in the judicial let's say council judicial in Kurdistan, we have they have a website. For example, they have a part of that website. It's dedicated to the research. Okay. One time I sent a research for them. They refused my research because I am not judge. Okay, so they dedicated this part of research for judge. So they said you are not judge, you are just social worker. So this not having that board of making you to be encouraged, making you to have research. So this is most the most difficulty that we get. The last point that I want to mention, I want to not make it be late at the time. It's about language and technical barriers. So language, it is the most problem that we face, because usually we do our practical research in our language. For example, I am doing in Kurdish. Okay, so you have to translate all these practicals data or all this practical data that you collected, even if it is qualitative or quantitative data. So you have to translate those huge of data and information into an English language. So this somehow make you to feel that it is not appropriate word. So this is some challenges that I faced. But to conclude my speech, this research, this program that I participated encouraged me to overcome some of these obstacles, some of these limitations that I mentioned. It was very helpful for me. Thank you for Dr. Erson, first of all of anyone, because he was working with us in very hard. And sometimes what I remember, one time I asked him, you are very patient, how you feel? He said, it is my job. Okay, so thank you for everyone. Thank you for having me with this meeting.
Thank you, Jihad, for your contribution and your comments. Dr. Fran Sutherland, would you like to say a few thoughts as someone who's been working with academic and with Iraqi higher education, in terms of your PhD, Dr. Fran now, as of the past few months, with very strong connections to Iraq and Iraq's higher education.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I'd like to begin by just saying I'm in awe of what I've heard. I'm so sorry for joining late. Unfortunately, I had conflicting work diaries today, but the eloquence and the richness of the speeches and contributions today, I am honoured to be here. And you are reminding me how much I genuinely love working and collaborating with Iraqi people. I love it. And thank you to Dr. Mehia and Professor Eleanor Robson for this opportunity. Not to make this formal at all, but I did just make a couple of slides only to remind me what I wanted to say today, and also in case people prefer to read rather than listen. So I wanted to just briefly introduce my own connections with Iraq and Iraqi higher education. And then to not repeat what people have already said, but hopefully add a few other observations of my own in relation to the academic course and research challenges and opportunities for the sector in Iraq moving forwards from my outsider perspective. So I'm going to do that classic of, can anyone see the slide?
Yes, we can.
It is fantastic. So just to introduce myself then, I am a university educational developer. I've worked in education most of my adult life, in leadership and management as well. So my involvement with Iraqi higher education began with an Iraqi healthcare programme organised by the Ministry of Health around 2011, and obviously ended summer of 2014. And that was my first opportunity to engage with Iraqi academics and nurses, doctors and radiographers who, as part of a memorandum of understanding between the UK and Iraq, came to Sheffield Hallam University to embark on a professional development programme at a pre-master's level. And not only have those participants gone on to become leaders, healthcare officials, and they have also embarked on masters and PhDs themselves. So it's been very useful, which is what it was intended to be, but it also provided a unique bridge, if you like, where myself and the other lecturers involved in the programme realised that joy of teaching, which goes way beyond instruction and anything transactional at all. We spent many hours listening to our Iraqi colleagues, listening to stories that to this day would make me cry, and developing a real sense of empathy. I don't know if I can say empathy because obviously I'm British, sympathy. And we learnt to listen better. And I think that for myself has underpinned my approach to education since then. I learnt to listen better and to be able to question official narratives, hopefully to the benefit of students and people we work with. So in 2017, I wrote a dissertation, a master's dissertation called The Case for the Qualitative Restitution of Iraqi Higher Education. And that was essentially concerned with evaluating the need for human reparations rather than financial ones. About half of the thesis was dedicated to uncovering the history of Iraqi higher education at a very deep level. Now, I went back to Mesopotamian times to current times. So that, for me, provided a very strong contextual base from which to develop partnerships in education, but also understand theoretical perspectives too. It involves some primary research with a couple of hundred participants regarding how they thought people should be taught and how they would like to learn. My most recent thesis is called From Pessimism to Prospects, Critical Roles of the Iraqi Social Sciences in Post-War Iraq. And without labouring too much on this, I really tried to dig into decolonising methodologies, very much concerned, as Ariane said earlier, with notions of epistemic justice. And I tried to form the research questions with Iraqi participants that wanted to be interviewed or wanted to do the questionnaire that I ended up having to do. So we defined the social sciences in Iraq from Iraqi voices rather than mine. And it helped me understand how the social sciences in Iraqi higher education are very marginalized compared to STEM subjects, medicine, and so on. We talked about research culture, and I think some of the previous participants today have identified how there could be more of a link between industry, policy, funding, and academia, which might help generate a more buoyant research culture, which is something that obviously we've been very fortunate to have in the UK. But again, I'm not saying it should happen, but these were the perspectives of people who took part in this research. And curriculum was the strongest theme, which I won't talk about today. Language, also very, very important, which I'll come to in a couple of minutes. And just since then, to say that I have maintained my involvement with Iraqi reports, research, and various collaborations to date. And I've been fortunate to work on this academic programme for the past year or so, really. So I have had input into the criticality side. We talked about critical reading, critical thinking, theoretical frameworks, a little bit about ethics, very much more about positionality, which I think is something that has emerged through this collaboration on the course this spring. What do we mean by positionality? And having more opportunities for researchers to be able to explore the breadth of philosophical perspectives that exist in the world today, but we are not necessarily, or maybe for Iraqis, not necessarily defining themselves only within those philosophical perspectives, but finding opportunities for them to articulate their own philosophical perspectives on an equal basis. So I just remembered this quote earlier, which I wanted to share because I think it speaks to the approach that Ariane and I think, Ariane, please jump in if I'm speaking for you and it's not correct, but I think we found commonality in our approach, which is summed up here by the capability approach, defined by its choice of focus upon the moral significance of individuals' capability of achieving the kind of lives they have reason to value. And I guess my interpretation for the course and our design of the course was that we didn't want to take an instructional approach. We are very aware of, as outsiders, of Iraqi history and traumas from the outside, and the need to not present a version of truth or a version of reality that is correct, but to just say from our British perspective, this is what we see to be best practice in the UK. I've been able to work at different universities, so we really brought elements of practice that works here in the English-speaking world to say this is what it looks like, but it doesn't mean it's correct. It doesn't mean it works for you. Please, let's just talk about it from your position and your perspectives. You can take what's useful and create whatever you like. We're not here to tell you what is right or wrong. So I just want to finish then on my key observations, hopefully not repeating what other people have said then. In terms of where do we go from here in Iraqi higher education and what the challenges or needs might still be. I think decolonising approaches towards epistemic justice, by epistemic we mean knowledge and how we come to know knowledge. So I'm very aware of my position as a person with a British passport, the relationship of Britain with Iraq historically, and making sure that we are not dictating, we're not taking a sort of top-down didactic approach to our collaborations, and that our educational partnerships are not interventions. We are not saying, as people have in the recent past, how things should be done. For instance, critical thinking has been weaponized, I think, through my own reading of literature in the past by certain people and policies saying that Iraqis need critical thinking. I'm not here to say anybody needs anything. If it's interesting to you and you think it's useful, then that's wonderful. I'm happy to take part in that discussion. So what has emerged out of the two courses that we've done this spring? My takeaways are that we need a lot more time to be able to explore qualitative methodologies and qualitative approaches for humanities and social science researchers. I think because of the history of Iraqi higher education, the golden years in the 1970s, followed by concurrent wars, sanctions, interventions, regime change, etc., everything that you have had to deal with. My perception, all this way away in the UK, is that sometimes people are still looking to the 1970s, to the golden years, and maybe seeking to build from there rather than thinking where we are now in 2025. And that bears relation to our approach to research and thinking with a qualitative mind rather than a quantitative one. For example, on the previous course, some people were suggesting research topics and research aims that are to do with people, emotions, feelings, and that sort of phenomena. But they were looking towards quantitative methods of analysis and quantitative methodologies. So I think there's work to be done on finding coherence in our research design. And that could be through different mechanisms. Maybe there's an opportunity for a course to have an advanced qualitative methodology type course where invested academics could collaborate with other people about very contemporary approaches to qualitative and post-qualitative methodologies. And as a speaker before me said about libraries, this is something that I have noticed myself through my research and discussions with Iraqi academics for very understandable reasons. It's nobody's fault directly. Library investment has been an issue. I don't want to necessarily dig into political history that has destroyed libraries in the past, but to look forwards more positively with library investment, with access to journals and online materials. I'm fairly sure that a lot of these problems would be remedied, or not problems, but opportunities for moving forwards. I think I mentioned already about philosophical and personal positionalities. It's something that has been really interesting for Ariane and myself to discuss with people on the past two courses. And again, thinking if you're working in the humanities and social sciences, we're tending to work with interpretative methodologies, but we need a lot more time and focus to be able to explore those in more depth. And lastly, I concur, language is an issue. English is still currently lingua franca, unfairly. I imagine it is beginning to change with technology and also as other countries in a more multipolar world gain greater significance in the academic arena. But for now, thank you for listening to me in English and for speaking your own speeches today in English. And I'm sorry that I can't speak Arabic or Kurdish fluently to be able to reciprocate at this point in time. But thank you for listening, and thank you for looking to stop sharing.
Thank you, Fran, for those very prudent, wise words and comments. We have one of our attendees has raised his hand. Muthanna Hamid, would you like to ask any questions or any statements you would like to make?
No, thank you very much. I would to thank all professors and teachers for this lecture. I want to thank everyone participate in this lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Riyam, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Unfortunately, ever since this session started, my internet connection was unstable, so I was unable to follow the session very clearly due to frequent disconnection. Additionally, I was not fortunate enough to be a beneficiary from this scheme as I was preparing to apply. Then I received a regrettable email saying that this scheme is ending. I was hoping to conduct more research that can add to my master's degree in incorporating AI with museum studies. So I was hoping if you can help me in a way to navigate the future of my research, maybe if there is a future opportunities or a more like a new collaboration that I can apply to. And of course, I thank you everyone who participated today for this informative session. And I'm sorry I was not able to listen to everything clearly. And thank you so much for allowing me to say my statement.
Thank you, Riyam. I will email you in a second. I'll send you my email in a second. Is there anyone else from the attendees that would like to make a statement or ask a question? Hawra. Go ahead, Hawra. We can't hear you, Hawra, in case you have to unmute. Is there anyone else from the panelists that would like to make a statement as we are coming to a close now, either from the panelists or from the attendees? Go ahead, Fran.
I just wondered if we can respond to the question that Ali Hasnawi raised in the Q&A previously.
Yeah, go ahead.
They've written, as an emerging cultural practitioner, I want to publish the findings of my work, but I found I lack any knowledge on how to do that, especially in the Iraqi context. I'd appreciate any resource suggestions, please. And thank you for the question. I just wanted to say this was exactly the kind of thing that we have on the Extend course, which constitutes the online learning for the academic course. So if you have not been a participant on that course, we are hoping to make the course available in Iraq. So one, that might be available to you in the future. But secondly, for now, I'm wondering, Mehia, if the Padlet that Ariane and I made with all the resources could be shared with people in the meeting, because there were links there for advice and guidance for publishing various different websites to look at.
We can also send a follow-up email with the link to the Padlet. Jihad, would you like to say something? I think you've frozen, maybe. Is there anyone else from the Jihad? Would you like to? You've got your hand raised. Go ahead, Jihad. You have to unmute yourself. In the meantime, Dr. Aus.
Thank you, Mehia. I just want to say that in terms of the social studies, there are right now good type of research being published in Mosul city itself. And through the free time that I have attended many PhD and MA research, and I can see that these topics are tackling the issues and reality. So, for example, the corruption in the Iraqi institutions, the social stability. Right now, they have the peace building program that is attached to the sociology department and the other department. So there is a gradual movement. But still, most of these research are published in Arabic, but I can tell you that they are tackling real issues and valuable topic. So this is just what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aus. Jihad?
Sorry, just the last thing that I want to mention. It's like a question and suggestion, you can say. It's for Nahrein network. I know that your focus is on the higher education, especially universities. But if you have find kind of way that you have a contact with the other sectors of the government sectors. I know that is very wide sectors, but you name it yourself networks. So networks should be included more sectors. So if there's any opportunity, if there was any things that you can do it with the other sectors out of the higher educations. For example, in my sector, for example, as a social worker at the court, I can do something that make facilities for doing a research or doing something. So this my point is to get your focus from the higher education, remain your focus on higher education, but included some other sectors out of the higher education. Thank you.
Thank you, Jihad. We have Professor Eleanor would like to say a word.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed listening to what you've had to say. I'm so delighted to hear what a positive impact the programme has had on so many people. But it's also been really helpful to hear both the critiques and the reflections on the wider context of the ways in which you conduct your research and are prevented from conducting your research. So all of these will feed into the final report that we're writing. As you know, the network will be closing at the end of August, so it's just 10 weeks of our work left now. So unfortunately, there will not be opportunities for us to do any further work, but the report that we will be issuing will be very clear in its recommendations. And so what you have said to us today will feed into that. But I also want to say something very personal as well, that although this is ending, I hope that the things you have learned, not just about the way to do your particular type of research, but the sorts of academic exchanges and pedagogical methods that you have participated in over the past several years will live with you and you will take them forward. So I was very interested to hear about the ministry's new decision to encourage Iraqi colleagues who have studied abroad to take more managerial roles. Now that's both a curse and a blessing, isn't it? On the one hand, that's less time for you to do your research, but it's also your opportunity to make change. So, you know, that was a decision I made when I was becoming more senior in my university and in my profession in my country. I could have decided to keep just doing the same things, but I was given the opportunity to make change, to make what I think has been positive change. We haven't, through the network, been able to change everything, but I would like to think, and I hope, that we have made a significant difference to many people's working lives and many people's sense of hope and opportunity. So all I would say is pass this on if you can. When you get the opportunity for leadership, be the sort of leader that you would have liked to have earlier in your career, as much as you can without putting yourself at risk. Be brave, build on the networks that you have made. I mean, gosh, I have learned so much from so many of you, given me the courage to be the sort of leader I wanted to be, thanks to you. Because we can't just sit and wait for change. We have to make a difference. And it might just be in our department or with our students or in our family context. But if we all make that constructive decision, then the world in which we live and the people that we operate and live with are better and happier for it. So yeah, so thank you for doing that for all of us, and I hope that will live with you too.
Thank you, Elena, and thank you to our panelists for a very productive, very insightful session. We will continue this discussion, albeit through with each other as Iraqi colleagues, as colleagues based in the UK, in Turkey. And I believe that what we've achieved so far has been a role model, and we would like to express this or convey this to the Ministry of Higher Education and from them to Iraq's universities. I know that some of us will continue to be engaged in the higher education sector, working with Iraqi colleagues. On that note, I'd like to thank also our attendees and our the Ministry of Higher Education. And if Eleanor, if you would like to say anything additional.
Just to say, 2 weeks' time, same place, for our final webinar to discuss how the network has impacted on history and heritage and the humanities more generally, through the research that you all have done.
Thank you, Elena. Dr. Alia?
Oh, no, that was by mistake. So sorry.
Okay.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
All right.
I'm sorry.